And it looked like some people at Comic-Con actually interviewed the cast of Krapopolis, which is launching next year in 2023, which I'm super stoked about. And I know you guys are going to be launching an NFT collection associated with Krapopolis called Krap Chickens. And so we wanted to delve into that a little bit as well, because that's kind of interesting. Melody, hello. It is so good to have you here on Good Humans with Women and Weapons. Everybody in the crowd, I am Sarah Bauman. I am the creator and artist for Women and Weapons. And this is Jake. He's my lovely co-founder. And today we have the incredible Melody Hildebrandt on our show with us. So Melody is the CISO of Fox Corporation, and she's the president of Blockchain Creative Labs. And so we're going to be talking to her a little bit today about Blockchain Creative Labs, about Fox, and a little bit about their upcoming NFT and show called Krapopolis and Krap Chickens. Melody, first and foremost, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, Sarah. Thanks for having me. As you know, I'm a big fan of your project. So it's awesome to be here with you guys. Been a holder for a while. So yeah, I'm really honored to be here. You kind of noted my professional designations, I guess, and it's kind of a funny mixing of hats, I think, in that I, running cybersecurity for a large company, but then also kind of co-founded within that company what's really kind of a startup that was incubated within the Fox ecosystem, but now is kind of has its own destiny and kind of its own company, its own right, which is Blockchain Creative Labs, which is really us kind of making the bet that Web3 is here to stay. It's very early days. It's a tremendous opportunity for a media company like ours to kind of jump in the deep end and really go for it. And that was kind of what, BCL, as we founded it last year, had that hypothesis. And now we're about a year in. And I think some of our initial hypotheses about the ecosystem were true. So I'm excited to talk to you about some of the stuff we're up to.
Well, speaking of the word hypothesis and hypotheses, can you delve in a little bit further about what were your initial hypotheses about what Web3 might turn into, what NFTs might turn into?
I think the two key areas that we got really excited about were thinking about how content in Hollywood, is financed and produced, and then how that content is also distributed. Fox, looking at the distribution side of it, we had chosen, not to participate in, I think, what are now called the streaming wars, right? Like we didn't launch a direct to consumer Fox Plus streaming service, right? I think the leadership team really, several years ago, and a move that I think was actually a bit ahead of its time, kind of looked at what was emerging there and realized there's going to be very few winners in this market that's all about bulk, right? It's all about having a massive library and then, selling a monthly subscription against that. And we kind of opted out of that mode of distribution. And I think we have a pretty heterogeneous group of fans, between the real sports fans who want to watch the NFL, to news fans, to Fox Entertainment fans who are watching The Masked Singer. But this kind of Fox Plus, we thought wasn't a bucket that, is kind of too monolithic. And so I think when we looked at this, we're well, since we don't have everything tied up with that distribution strategy, this potentially see what the possibilities were to actually reach these super passionate audiences that we have, like the number one news channel, the number one unscripted show on television, the number one watch show, generally is the Super Bowl every year. We thought this was actually an opportunity to activate those communities and distribute directly to those communities outside of call a bundle of stuff. So that was kind of one initial big idea I think that we were excited about. And we thought, there's a technical promise here. And I think also maybe it's just me as and my partner, but just coming from a more crypto, pro crypto background, I think just seeing the opportunity to disintermediate a little bit of tech platforms that were defining how content creators and fans were connecting in ways that weren't always good for either side. And that if we could collapse that a little bit and think about how the content creators could get closer to their fans, like all the way up to, I think, the big idea there, which is around financing it. We say, my co-creator, who's who runs our animation studio, also, says like the next Simpsons should be owned by the fans, the creator,
100%.
and the tech, the technology provider a little bit. So those are kind of the two, I think, big ideas that we were excited about. But we realized like to get there, there's like, it's just a lot of building blocks. There's a lot of groundwork we need to lay before we can activate those big ideas.
Yeah. And I mean, I think those big ideas are starting to play out. And first off, I mean, the audience is, again, in for a treat today. You've got a really, really smart and brilliant, basically embodiment of women and weapons here today.
You are women and weapons.
And so I first off, I love that you guys are affectionately calling this kind of like this Blockchain Creative Labs, like a startup within Fox. I really, really like what you guys are doing and your mentality that you guys have and are bringing to the table. And what I find really, really interesting that I'd love you to speak to about a little bit is how you guys have an enormous audience, but one of the problems that you experience is that you've got to educate this audience, this massive audience that you have, on crypto and on NFTs and on blockchain and all this stuff. And you've done a really phenomenal job of that already. And so I'd love it if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm personally passionate, just about bringing more people into Web3 and just recognizing that, I think it's easy when you're in that loop to think like, oh, people are kind of late to NFTs. Like, no, like in the scheme of things, like we haven't gotten started, right? Like we're
just launching.
So we're in spring training, right? Like the season hasn't started, as they say.
Yeah.
So onboarding people is something that we're really excited about. But then realizing that, to reach a mainstream audience, there has to be really a value proposition there that has to be explained to these consumers. And I think one thing we observed is that, the people who are often best suited to explain to consumers, like, are the trusted voices that these fans are already really passionate about. So our first project, we launched about a year ago now with The Masked Singer. And that was, really our first question, like, will these fans show up? Like, can we get the Masked Singer audience, which our research suggested had extraordinarily low, if any, overlap with early adopter crypto people? Can we get, that fan base to show up and buy NFTs and join a Discord and participate in this asset ownership, new economy? And one of the things we did was like, and then to stay true to the show, to actually like embrace the creative and to make the Maskverse that we launched like an extension, like that's really fundamentally connected to the underlying intellectual property. So the fans could kind of get it, right? It wasn't just totally foreign. And then also to partner with the creative team, the showrunner, to actually produce a character that was kind of like the bridge between the two worlds. So we created this character called Miss Maskey. And the first thing we launched was like a free Miss Maskey token. It was like, she is your ticket. Like, she's your guide who will help you understand, how to onboard into this space, how to think about this ownership, how to actually activate your utility, how to redeem, these different collection benefits. And she would then be on air and she'd be in the, in the Maskverse online. And that connection, I think, was really powerful. And that's what get Masked Singer fans excited. Like, I'm part of that. Like, they see it on television, right? And like millions of people are watching, and, really small things. We had like the show voted on, or some of our holders voted on like the pin that like some of the guys are going to be wearing, the Men in Black, who are, iconic parts of the show, would be wearing, like, voted on their outfits, and they'd be like, I participated in that. We were like, all right, so these fairly, small things actually can be very meaningful to the community if they feel like they're contributing. And that drove initially, like, our first season drove over 250,000 wallet installs. We're like, all right, we can get
amazing,
250,000 people in season one of this project. Like, we're just getting off just out the door ourselves with the tech. Like, we're like, oh, these fans are going to show up if we can give them something that's useful. So that part of the playbook we've kind of repeated with the WWE, with Krapopolis. Actually, later this week, we're going to be launching our educational content, which is going to be straight from the show. It's going to be like totally authentic to Dan Harmon. It's going to be awesome. So that's kind of, and we're trying to really think about that as some evergreen content to just reach different types of audiences, like through the talent that they respond to the most.
Well, and so smart to pair onboarding with education, but also with entertainment and a little bit of like fan autonomy as well. I mean, you marry all those characteristics together, and I think that we're creating a very interesting new avenue of participation for people. So very smart. And it sounds like y'all's hypotheses are coming to life, essentially.
Yeah, and we've now launched Krapopolis will be like our 6th production project. We had our 3rd chain that we've launched on. So I think through that we've learned different things. Our USFL project over the course of the season went through 3 payment providers, right? So as we continually are trying to solve these, identify we're experiencing in the field actual high friction points, and then figuring out how to build around them. And there's a little bit of acknowledging that this is a little bit harder than one-click shopping on Amazon, right? But that's okay. At South by Southwest, I was onboarding just hundreds of people, and I had this tagline I started talking. I'm friction is freedom. This is this is actually it's
Good
okay.
one.
It's a little bit harder. I was trying to get myself to believe it too, but it's a little bit harder. But it's you're just taking more ownership. You're not signing everything away in exchange for ease. And so it's the right balance there. I mean, obviously we should make things easier. Their things are unnecessarily hard and inaccessible to many people. So we have to continue to knock those things down, but also to recognize it's not one-click shopping on Amazon. And that's okay, because one-click shopping on Amazon has a lot of negative externalities.
Yes, very true. No, that's super interesting. And speaking of South by Southwest, Blockchain Creative Labs had a pretty big footprint at South by Southwest. And most recently, I saw you guys had a pretty big footprint at Comic-Con as well. And it looked like some people at Comic-Con actually interviewed the cast of Krapopolis, which is launching next year in 2023, which I'm super stoked about. And I know you guys are going to be launching an NFT collection associated with Krapopolis called Krap Chickens. And so we wanted to delve into that a little bit as well, because that's kind of interesting.
I could not be more stoked for this project. I think this was, this actually was, we announced this project first. Our first, when we first started the company, we were seeded with this $100 million creator fund. It was really to work with creators on bringing their content into Web3. And so this was the first thing we announced, but animated series take a long time to produce. There's there's a lot of investment to actually bring this concept to life. I mean, leaving aside the Web3 piece, actually just to have an on-air animated series. But it's been awesome to be able to work side by side kind of with that creative team through the past year. And then as we're launching our product in advance of the actual air date, it will provide opportunities as well for the community to actually inform part of the show, which is super exciting. Krapopolis, it's our, Dan Harmon, an absolute legend. Rick and Morty community. And our first project, it takes place in ancient Greece. And one of the currencies of the time was chickens. And so that's where the concept came for Krap Chickens. And we're releasing 10,420 of them, all one of ones. The art's amazing. It's all pulling. Everything's from the show. I think there's going to be a lot of Easter eggs for the fans who have certain characteristics in the show. I have other NFT that will see that in the show. So there'll be, I think, a really tight connection artistically between the two. Obviously, the same artistic team is building both. But we're using 10,420. We had to sneak in a 420 joke. Generally, we have a lot of autonomy. I still had to get that approved by the General Counsel of Fox.
Well, and, I was reading into it a little bit more thoroughly as well. Not only 10,420 for the very obvious reason, but also 10,420 because that is how long it takes a chicken to run a marathon.
Naturally.
Yes. It only makes sense.
Estimate. Exactly. I think it's 10,418. We're we can't.
Let's round up. Yeah, we might as well round up. Why not?
Shorter chicken. Can't let this.
I just love that got through our friends at Fox. That just gives me so much joy. I just want to say, Dan Harmon, ancient Greece, NFTs. What more could you want? It's really, really exciting. And I just want to dive a little bit deeper into this because I really like your vision here, your guys' vision in that. If you think back at some of the most amazing IP or amazing shows that have been created that have generated these really sticky, amazing audiences, they didn't really get to participate in any way in this amazing IP that was created. And so tell me a little bit about your thoughts about having now active participants or co-creators, not really co-creators, but participants in the creation process of the show and the IP and everything like that.
Yeah, I think, we fundamentally are a creative company that I think recognizes obviously the genius of creators and the vision, right? So like, this is not necessarily going to be a open writers room with 10,420 participants.
Right.
But there's so many opportunities in between that, right? So
Yes.
from, fundamentally think about normal television is like broadcast television, it's like one to many, right? And that is like,
Yes.
so the model, right? So it's like, how can we collapse that a little bit while like still obviously having like the creative vision and autonomy hold true? And so some of that is just like, I think more access. People want to understand, like, how was this show created? Like, what is the process? What is a table read like? What is, like, how did these certain ideas come to life? And that's a big thing of what we're going to be doing. We're releasing a whole token gated screening room with, all kinds of exclusive content that will bring people a little bit like behind the curtain to how the process actually unfolds. We'll also be releasing content early. So I think that's
nice.
So there's before the shows go on air, you'll be token holders will be able to get early access to content.
Love that. That's fun.
Get to some of the distribution. That's where like pushing, the boundaries of distribution a little bit. So that's again, like this is like, early access, we think is powerful. And then there's like, there are these aspects of voice that we're excited to release. Right. And so, this is an example that we've talked about a little bit. We're going to keep a little bit of secret, but one example we've talked about is like, there's a lot of weapons in the show. You guys would appreciate that. Having, okay, this guy needs to slay this guy, but like, what weapon should he use? Right. And how the community actually like participate in that kind of decision. We think it's going to be really fun. And I'm trying to talk to you guys about that and your weapon choices.
Yes.
Time to think of it.
Well, in case you're ever wondering, I'm very partial to the gold daggers that are from season 1. So if you guys can sneak in a gold dagger in there,
dropping some.
Not gonna lie, you guys have a fan like one way or the other because I'm obsessed with ancient Greece and obsessed with Dan Harmon shows. So like all the above, culminated together. I'm ecstatic about it. I'm just beyond excited to watch it. Also, the name Hippocampus of one of the characters, me being a science nerd, you sold me on that front too.
Yeah, and that, by the way, like as it just like randomly, I was watching some of the Comic-Con footage, and Duncan Trussell is that Hippocampus character who I'm really, really like a fan of. So I think that he's going to be really, really funny. So I'm super excited about it. It's going to be really cool.
And just to like really quickly sidebar, so just a couple of fun facts about Krapopolis and Krap Chickens coming out is they're launching on August 11th. And it's going to be 10,420 NFTs with really cool associated utility to them, which is really exciting. The show is officially going to air next year in 2023. And on top of that, you've got Krap chickens, which were utilized as a currency in ancient Greece. So way to go on the delving into the history of it all. So really excited for you guys. Now, where are you guys going to be launching for Krap chickens?
So we will, so August 11th is, we'll have an allow list mint first that build up real fast. And then we'll have our general mint at noon on the 11th, and that'll be at krapopolis.com. I think it's another fun thing about the show too, is that you'll notice like there's no separate like krapopolisnft.com, right? It's like krapopolis.com is the home for the show. And Web3 and NFTs are just embedded into the whole thing. So like it's your one-stop shop as a Krapopolis fan. It's krapopolis.com, at Krapopolis on Twitter, right? And I think that kind of integration, it's one of the lessons we've had from like launching, I think, a few things now is like you don't really want this like thing sitting over here. If you're talking about like core IP, it's like you just kind of got to either in or out, right? And so I think we kind of obviously went all in on this. So yeah, it's all everything. You're home for everything Krapopolis is krapopolis.com and at Krapopolis on Twitter and our Krapopolis Discord.
Awesome.
And that'll be our private event is happening. And it'll be our first mint on mainnet Ethereum, which is
a big deal.
Exciting first.
That is an exciting first, and I just want to say, like, as one more, like, I just really appreciate as an enormous brand, right, at Fox, and then also this affectionate little startup that you guys have with Blockchain Creative Labs. I love that the approach that you've done and the way that you've entered the space and entered it the right way. You've really brought people into our space, which we really just genuinely appreciate, and I just love that you're doing it also for your massive audience, but then also for the degens. You're doing it the right way here too. So I'm also excited finally to have you guys on mainnet and your first little dip in the pool on mainnet. So that's really, really exciting. And another point that I just really want to hit on is so many people talk about having a show, or we want to have a comic book. I mean, we're in that department.
We're in that
right?
category, yeah.
But we're born on the blockchain and building from the ground up. You guys quite literally already are in production. Like, this is a real thing that's taking place in action and is just around the corner. So really, really cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. And another thing that I really wanted to touch on, because you did kind of mention it a little bit earlier, is that you guys have been through some like trials and tribulations as you've been learning about the space. And so I'm curious as to like, what are some things that you guys, what are some bumps that you've hit? What are some things that you've learned along the way that you're wanting to implement into the future? Things like that, you know, maybe some of our viewers can even learn from, especially given that you guys are such a big brand that are probably facing a lot of the same struggles that many of us founders are.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I think, I think generally in NFTs, there's like a few categories of areas that are identified as high friction. Like one is onboarding. So it's like, well, what is the wallet experience, right?
Right.
And what wallet do you choose to onboard people? Do you have a non-custodial or custodial option? Like, do you allow people to bring their own wallet, or you just try to create like a perfectly closed ecosystem? And you obviously see successful projects who have pursued all these approaches.
Yes.
And we have in market, all of them. So, the Masked Singer we launched with was like a purely like kind of Web 2 onboarding experience, right? That users didn't have, it was totally abstracted away from them, this concept of keys. It was still like an EVM compatible chain, but like an average user was really abstracted away from the underlying blockchain tech. And that felt like the right decision. But as we've moved forward with that choice, we work with our partner Alluvio, we actually invested in them as well. We've opened it up. We're like, you know what, we're hearing from people, they want, if people have MetaMask, want to bring that experience, right?
Yes.
And then it's also like, all right, we should open bridges. Like, people who have these assets want the opportunity to bring it out. So we call it 95% of the users don't, right? So we build for the fan, but then we want to also like serve the degen, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of take the long run view of the fan, but it's like, I want the degens to look at our stuff and be like, that's legit, So that was an example, I think, of our most like Web 2 experience. And then at South by, we kind of went full degen, I think, on our approach. We just kind of, it was like all on Polygon, bring your own wallet, buy crypto, you need crypto to purchase. And we had on-ramps to buy crypto, but we were seeing, you run into real hurdles, like buying crypto in Texas is real tough. And that's where South by Southwest is.
We know that.
Yeah, we know that. We're Texas people.
Okay. So that was, a hurdle that we encountered in real life, and then, always 70% like maybe clearance rates on credit cards. Like, for first-time users who get like bank fraud chart, notifications, like that's a little scary, right?
Yes.
As you're trying to create an experience. So the onboarding, the payments, I think now, like USFL, I think is an example. We tried to bring the best of both worlds. We actually worked with, we support Wallet Connect, right? So you can bring your own wallet. But then we have Taurus for like first-time users. And again, this is a brand new football league that is housed in Birmingham, Alabama, mostly first-time users, right? So we have, I think, best of both worlds on that, where you can kind of come on with your own wallet, or you can have a Web 2 onboarding experience and we'll custody that wallet for you. I mean, for that project, we actually onboarded 175 athletes onto crypto because they all get paid through the smart contract.
So cool.
And so that was cool. We're like, all right, we want to get the players to get paid, and we want that in the smart contract, like not abstract. We want that on chain. Like, we don't want that to be like abstracted through like a back office operation.
Right.
Like, none of these athletes, very few of these athletes have crypto wallets, right? So that's like, I think some of the things we've learned is that I think now, like, you need to support people to bring your own wallet. There's enough penetration in the space now that you don't, people who are in the space don't want to sign up for a kind of walled garden. They want their stuff in their wallet. So I think that's one thing we've learned, but we also, we have to provide like an option for people who don't have a wallet, where they don't have to remember their own keys. And it's like not the most crypto pure thing to say.
Yes, purist.
And so, but like, that's just where a lot of people are. I mean, I think we need to meet people where they are. And then, I think I like a lot of the some projects that are like, moving people then to custody your keys, right? We're thinking a lot about this ourselves, actually, just to get people into the ecosystem, get the benefit of like owning your own keys. I would feel say like not your keys, not your crypto, but like, it's a bit of a journey. And then the payments thing is we've made a lot of strides on as well, where I think it's like, you want fiat on-ramps, but you want people to bring their own crypto too. So it's just, you got to serve the fan, serve the degen. And it's like, it's striking the right balance. But for us, I think the most important thing is like, given the choice, like we really serve the fan. Like if this is going to make this inaccessible to a fan, then we know it's not right for us and for the projects, because we're taking the long view, and we know like we need to bring these people with us, and it's going to expand the pool, it's going to expand liquidity, it's going to like, provide that foundation for, all the bigger things we want to do.
Yeah. And, I love that you're meeting people where they are. And I mean, I myself started with, custody wallets, and you gradually, as you learn more, as you gain exposure, you get to dip your feet into the scary pool, and you learn more as you go. And so I love that you're meeting people where you are. And if we really want to start to widen this circle and this amount of wallets that is really still a small space, we've got to start to meet people where we are and not get upset that, it's a it's a Web 2 on-ramp, it's all these different things. So I'm really happy to hear that you guys are thinking about it that way as well and have a long-term view of the space. Since you have such a brilliant mind, I want to ask you, like, it doesn't necessarily need to be BCL or Fox, and it could be, but what really is the most exciting one or two things that you see in this space that you're really looking forward to? And it could be a problem that you want to go and fix, or somebody that's working on something cool that you're excited about.
Awesome question. I'm excited about innovation in wallets, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think I really like the Rainbow project. I think what they're doing is really cool to build like an accessible wallet for normies that still has a lot of the principles, of like crypto pure principles. So I'm watching the wallet space really closely, and like innovations that are happening there, because I felt like there wasn't innovation for a long time, and people thought things were good enough, and they definitely weren't good enough. And so that's an area I'm really interested in. Another area is just really kind of content distribution more generally. I think some really interesting projects. Like obviously we invested in Luvio because we thought there was an interesting like just content delivery method, like innovation that could happen here. I mean, my previous job was I built streaming services, like live streaming services, and like just think about like from the cloud to CDN to like all the whole stack to actually get content, like 4K content from point A to point B, is this massively expensive thing that's concentrated in like 3 or 4 providers. So when you have like a CDN outage, that's why like you see half the websites that you use suddenly go out. It's like, everyone's fronted by CloudFront. It's like, CloudFront is having an outage, right? And so from like and obviously 3 cloud providers are providing kind of all the core infrastructure for servicing, content on the web. So I think there's some like Live Peer is a really interesting project. So we invested in Luvio, who are working on this as well. So I think this move towards like decentralized content delivery it's super interesting, and it will break like the hegemony of like 5 providers who like totally control space. And then future advertising models I'm really excited about. That's a little earlier days, but just I think some of the just the principles around how to like enable more consumer control of data, actual consumer consent, actually evaluating data. So it's like this really early days on that, but I feel like that there's like foundational principles, or I think there's a technical breakthroughs here that someone's going to build something, maybe us, really interesting for a bit more of a safe and respectful advertising model.
That'll be an interesting thing to learn about a little bit more in depth. That's not one that I feel like we've thought about much. In fact, like me being a former healthcare provider, a lot of like what I'm kind of being intrigued by is the possibilities of NFTs and blockchain in healthcare and healthcare records and things like that. So it's interesting to hear you talking about advertising, because that's kind of the direction that your brain goes in.
And people actually owning their data. I mean, it's really, really interesting. But All that being said, Melody, you are freaking amazing. Steph, the wizard behind the camera, you're going to have to throw up Melody's Women in Weapons whenever we do this in post. She has one of the coolest ones. I'm actually like super hyped about it. All the tech okagis, I'm like, a sucker for. So I really, really like it. But I think that probably what would be great to end on is like, if you have where can people find you? What's going on? Whether that's Krapopolis or your personal information, people really, really want to hear from you. And it'll also be in the description below. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, it's been so awesome talking to you. And again, I love your project. I've been a holder for a long time.
Thank you.
And will be holding. So I love my gal. So yeah, I mean, you can find us at We Are BCL. It's kind of like our home on Twitter. At Krapopolis is where we're talking about Krapopolis. I mean, that count blew up so fast.
So cool.
Really
Good
cool
for
to
you
see.
guys.
And that's where we'll be, hosting most of our information. But at We Are BCL talks about like most of our projects and what's coming down the pipe. I think our big stuff right now is WWE. We have a huge release we're having for SummerSlam that will be kind of curated, where Stephanie McMahon is curating and Triple H are curating kind of the NFTs to drop for that. So that's really bringing again, fans a little window into what are Steph McMahon's favorite SummerSlam moments of all time.
That's awesome.
So that'll be a lot of fun. That's coming up now, just in a couple of weeks as well. But yeah, I'm at mhill1, MHIL1. I'd love to hear from the community, and we're hiring if anyone's in the space.
That's actually what I was going to delve into next is, a lot of people are often asking us like, how do we get a job in Web3?
Yeah.
And like, I've been kind of combing through LinkedIn and some different, other websites. There's a lot of, companies that are hiring for Web3 positions, including Blockchain Creative Labs, which I've seen there's several openings on y'all's site as well, whenever I was just at y'all's website. So that's super exciting. People who fit those descriptions, go apply. There's lots of jobs available in the Web3 space. So make sure you check that out. And Melody, one last thing. Again, you are like the embodiment of a women in weapons. And I think that you're a massive inspiration. I think especially for women, for girls, I think for people all over the world. How does someone become a Melody? Like, what did you end up getting your degree in? Give us any sort of alpha that somebody might be able to utilize to learn how to become a Melody and do what you do.
Well, Sarah, that's a hard question to answer. It's so generously phrased. I have to say, like many people say, it's like a super nonlinear path. I mean, I have a degree in economics, totally useless. Never used that. I worked for the Department. I worked for the Department of Defense for years. I was super into board games and like parlayed that into designing war games.
Saw that on your Twitter,
kind of a cool thing to figure out. I got into tech, so I started a tech blog. I was like interested, and I was writing about stuff, and Palantir Technologies found my blog, and that transformed my life. I kind of moved from defense industrial complex into tech, that I happened to be there when there was like a massive cyber breach at a client. So I got super into cybersecurity.
Wow. That is unbelievable.
Went from there to like actually just met like in a sales meeting, my now current boss, the CTO of Fox. And he was looking for a CISO 4 years later, and, went there, and then Web3, I just kind of got interested in it and joined up with someone and pitched it. And, we got funded with $100 million. So there's there's not one path. I'm not sure I could even repeat this if I tried in terms of the path. But I think the main thing for me is like, I feel like people should not feel constrained by like education. Like when people say like, we didn't study engineering. I'm like, I've been working for 2 decades. I mean, like the decision I made at 17, I thought I was going to be like an ambassador to the United Nations. Like I had no idea. And so, it's just like I just don't feel constrained at all by education.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Like, seriously.
And also by qualifications for jobs generally. I when I got hired to Palantir in particular, I met 0 of the qualifications like on paper, but people, and I feel like talent finds a way to find a way.
Yes.
And I think leaders, find raw talent. And so
yes.
I feel like, unconstrained by like what are parameters that are put on. So one thing at Fox, actually, a big thing I led at Fox Tech was to get rid of all years of experience and actually educational requirements from all of our JDs in tech. And instead to have people talk about their projects and what things they've actually delivered. That's what I encourage people to think about and talk about. It's like more about what you delivered than
That right there is some juicy alpha. And the reason I ask you that is because I actually have a girlfriend who is also an occupational therapist like myself. And, you know, one of the things that's very difficult whenever you do get a specialized degree is that it's oftentimes very difficult to get out of that specialized degree if you want to, you know, expound those boundaries. And so to hear you saying, you know, that your path was not linear, and that, you know, the boundaries are only the boundaries that you set for yourself is something that's really exciting to hear, I think, for so many people that are out there. So I'm glad you said that.
Well, you're such an example of it as well then, you know, from OT to women and weapons. That's
thank you.
An unexpected path.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's been a bonkers path, that's for darn sure. But Melody, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really, truly appreciate your time and all of your information. I mean, you have just been magnificently full of insight. And we're so excited to see what Blockchain Creative Labs does, what Fox does. Total big fans of Krapopolis already and Krap Chickens. Excited for the experiences that are likely to come from Krap Chickens as well. So thank you again for your time and coming on today.
My pleasure. Such an honor to be with you guys. Thank you.